Hello, and welcome to the Second Chapter Variety Show, where we mix cosmic magic with a whole lot of business mastery. I'm your host, Hunter Louder, your friendly guide to business astrology, here to help you navigate your career's second act with the wisdom of the stars and innovative business strategies. Whether you're new to astrology or have been stargazing since day one, this podcast is your go-to for discovering who you truly are and aligning your business with your unique astrological blueprint. We're going to get real about what actions to take to build a perfect fit business. Each week, you can expect a mix of cosmic insights, practical business tips, and lots of laughter. Whether I'm chatting with guests who've embraced their own second chapters or diving into astro business wisdom, there's always something you can take away and apply to your own business. Do you feel like your current career just isn't working for you anymore? Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's the system you're in. Today, we're talking about how to break free from burnout and start building a career that works for you. Our guest, Katheryn Bermann, knows exactly how that feels and is here to share her inspiring story of starting over as a holistic wellness coach. In a world that often prioritizes hustle over health, many of us have struggled to find a balance that allows us to thrive. Katheryn's story of navigating neurodivergence, chronic illness, and career reinvention is a powerful reminder that it's possible to create work and life that supports rather than depletes you. Today, you'll learn how to redefine success on your own terms, the importance of creating safe, supportive spaces for yourself and others, how to identify and address patterns of burnout, especially for those who lead with compassion. If you're looking for a sign to pivot, to realign your career with your values, or simply to learn how to give yourself a much-needed break, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Second Chapter Society, where astrology meets business strategy to help spiritual entrepreneurs like you build soul-aligned businesses. I'm your host, Hunter Louder, and I've guided countless entrepreneurs through their second chapter. If you're ready to build a business that truly reflects who you are, you're in the right place. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Katheryn Bermann, a certified trauma professional and holistic wellness coach. Katheryn has a fascinating journey from social services and active duty Navy service to creating her own original coaching framework that's rooted in compassion and accessibility. Her motto is no masking required, and her mission is to create safe spaces for everyone, no matter their challenges. So welcome, Katheryn.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on today. I've got all my lovely questions prepped because I just can't wait to hear about your coaching framework, like your definition of neurodivergence, your experience, how you got to your second chapter. So I'm super excited to dive into that. But what I love to start with as a business astrologer is a little mini reading for you where we kind of look at your big three, what we like to call your astrological signature. So your sun sign, your moon, and your rising. I think you said you've had some readings done before and you also enjoy a good tarot card pull every now and again, I think you said.
Yep, I'm going to get my first deck soon. It's going to be the Druid Tarot.
Oh, lovely. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Well, a little bit later in the episode, everybody stay tuned. I'm going to pull from my hoard of cards myself. So hopefully I don't negatively influence you to start a nice collection like I have. But that's very exciting to get your first deck. I'm super looking forward to that for you. So what I wanted to jump into is just, like I said, your big three. So you are an Aquarius sun, and your sun is in your first house, which basically highlights your individuality and innovative approach to life. So someone who created their own coaching framework, check. That's Sun Aquarius for you right there. Doing things a little outside the box, a little bit differently than everybody else, like doing them your own way that works for you and then obviously works for your clients as well. You also have a moon in Capricorn in the 12th house.
Ooh.
And so this really allows you to have a very deep emotional resilience, and you also have a need for solitude in order to recharge. So Capricorn are definitely like the workhorses of the zodiac. They're all about career, like long-term plans, legacy. They set goals. They really just kind of work towards them. So your moon is all about like kind of how you emotionally nurture yourself, not only in your life, but also in your business. So in business for you, it's going to be really important to work hard. That's going to nurture you, but then also make sure with that 12th house placement that you're taking time to rest and recharge, not just like go all the time, time, which, as we know, leads to burnout, which I know we're going to talk about with your
Oh,
story as
yes.
well, something that's near and dear to my heart. And then finally, you're also a Capricorn rising. So our rising sign is like how others see us. So with this, you bring a really grounded, practical presence that really inspires a lot of trust and confidence in your clients. So with all these placements together, this really makes you someone who's uniquely equipped to help others find balance while staying true to their own path. Does that resonate with you at all?
I'm excited to
Does that sound
hear
like
that. I really hope it plays out.
Absolutely. Well, just based off what little I know about you, I was like, oh, this seems like it comes together. So there might be a little bit
Oh,
something
yeah.
to this astrology for self-discovery. But I would love to talk to you today about, one topic that's really near and dear to my heart too, which is burnout and, lack of alignment, which can really help us or really lead us to feeling stuck, especially when we're trying to make a difference in the world. So I know you really focus a lot on neurodivergent individuals or people with chronic illnesses and kind of help
Hmm.
them with the traditional challenges that a traditional life, a traditional career path, a traditional way of living might be a little overwhelming for them. So I would love to know, like, what does neurodivergent mean to you, and like, how has it shown up in your life and career?
Oh man, it shows up absolutely everywhere. Just as someone who is neurodivergent, I mean, all aspects of life, money, relationships, finance, careers, they are all processed a little differently than, say, the quote unquote average person would process. And if you ask me, there's no such thing as average. Talent profiles are spiky, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, spectrum, right?
Um, oh yes.
Yeah.
What that means for me is that I might take a little longer to, say, process verbal instructions. I might need a few seconds just to translate them into a way that makes sense to me. I like to say that being neurodivergent is kind of like speaking a dialect of the native language, which is you can function most of the time, you can get along, but sometimes things happen that are just totally unexpected, or sometimes you say something and you think you're saying one thing and then it's taken way differently and you're just asking what on earth went wrong. So that feeling of I'm speaking a different language is how that tends to show up a lot for me.
No, I love how you said that. It's almost like the nuance can be missing sometimes. And I think, communication is also incredibly important in life, in business, and career. And it's like we think we're saying something, but the way someone's receiving it is different. And then they think they're saying something back, and the way we're receiving
Oh,
it
yeah.
is different. And then that's like where frustrations, like miscommunication, like all those kind of things can come up. And I love that analogy. I love foreign languages. I love traveling. And that's so true. It's like, I think I'm saying this, but then the person
Yeah,
interprets it
no.
totally differently. Yeah, my son actually, who he just turned 18, he's a senior in high school, and so we adopted him at 10 months old, and he was diagnosed like in the beginning of second grade with dyslexia, dysgraphia,
Oh, wow.
and ADHD. And so my husband and I both, like, I'm not going to say we don't have any of that, but we don't have it to his level or his specific learning style. And so it's been a real learning process of like his brain works differently than our brain does. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm very self-directed. Like, nobody has to tell me what to do. I'm very
Hmm.
deadline driven. I have a lot of Virgo placements myself, so I'm very like organized. And he just, it's like he cannot do the things the way I do them. And it took me a while to understand that, and then to try and experiment a lot. So do you find like experimenting helps, like figuring out, because even if you're, oh, I learned better this way, but someone else next to you says, oh, I have the exact same diagnosis, they might not learn that same way either.
Oh, most definitely. I am
Mhm.
constantly trying new things. And if you had asked me like a few years ago, or especially when I got out of graduate school, I had a totally different way of approaching things. Like, it must all be evidence based, it must be
Mhm.
the accepted standard, you must have your randomized controlled trials, you must have your meta analyses. Um, I was trained in experimental psychology, so that was
Yeah.
kind of drilled into me. But now I really have the mindset of, you know what? If it works for you and it's not harming anybody and it's not harming you, go for it.
Hmm.
I'm dabbling in this astrological approach. I'm dabbling in kind of the esoteric stuff just to see
Hmm.
what happens, just to see if it works for me.
No, I agree with that. I think finding what
Yeah.
works for you is just so important. If it doesn't hurt you or anybody else, like go for it. And, I faced that too with my burnout. Like I went to the medical doctors. I did all the very logical, type A, very much, if I can see it, I can believe it. And the doctors are like, there's
Yep.
nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine. I'm like, I'm not fine. Like there's
Yep.
something happening. And that's kind of how I started getting into, like you said, the esoteric, because I'm like, Reiki, acupuncture, astrology, human design, Enneagram. I'm like, someone please help me figure out how to, make my life feel good again, so I love the experimentation.
Oh
I know
yeah.
you talked earlier, like your coaching style, you really mentioned no masking required. Like, what does that
Hmm.
mean for you or your clients? Like, what is masking for people that might not know what that even is?
So for people whose brains work a little differently, like I'm speaking just from my own personal experience, I'm not masking right now during this interview. You might see me like swiveling on my swivel chair or not making much eye contact. This is just what's most natural for me to communicate. If I
Okay.
were masking, I would be spending a lot of time focusing on making eye contact with the camera, using the body language that I think is appropriate, using all the social niceties. That's masking. It's doing things that are expected because they are expected. So when I say no masking required in my sessions, I mean you don't have to have your camera on. I don't care if you look me in the eye. I don't care what your body language is. Fidget. I got a fidget ring on right now. Just bring your authentic self. We'll learn to work with your brain and your specific body.
I love that. And it's something that people might not even realize they're doing. It's just like, here's how I feel
Oh, I didn't.
comfortable. Yeah. It's like, here's how I feel comfortable. This is what, soothes me. This is what helps me speak more confidently. This is what helps me gather my thoughts. Like, it's all these things that I think in school are kind of, taught out of us, sit still for 8 hours, like look at the
Oh,
teacher, raise your
jeez.
hand. And then you were in the Navy, the military, like that's even more of that reinforcement of do things a certain way. And if you don't do them a certain way, they're wrong.
Oh, I
And
have
I love
stories.
how the world, yeah, I love how the world's like relearning that, it's like, hey, just do it your own way, show up how you are and get the help you
Yep.
need, whether that's from a coach, a doctor, whatever it might be. So I love that. And you mentioned before, you don't follow any coaching like criteria or practice. You really created your own framework. Would you be able to tell me what that kind of consists of? I know you have a wellness audit, but I'd love to know
Yeah.
like kind of where you're bringing all of your expertise together.
So a lot of this comes from my own self-study. I accumulated my knowledge of how nutrition impacts mental health, like herbs and spices and different Eastern approaches and all this stuff that's really left out of the standard Western approach. This was not overnight. This took me like 3 years to get to the point where I want to get my knowledge out there. So yeah, when I went through my coaching certification, I was trained in somebody else's approach, but I really used my own, and it's super individualized. The bulk of it is just a wellness audit with
Mhm.
like 10 different overarching domains of wellness, like your career, money, finances, your communication, your leisure activities, all this stuff. And it gets really specific with the questions. Like if the surfaces around your house are mostly filled up or mostly bare, and how do you feel about that? Have you stopped to think about how this is impacting you? A lot of it is just built on principles of mindfulness, which again I used to laugh at. But it's amazing. It really is
Mhm.
amazing if you stop and think about it. Like, oh, I've been staring at this mess every day for 3 weeks. I'm just going to take care of it. And then that mess isn't there. And then you know that, hey, I made the space clean again. That's pretty cool. I give myself credit for that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's nobody's framework. I don't parrot anything back. I just have a really long list of questions that I made up, and it's not even done, and it's 14 pages. So you will walk away with some ideas. I can promise you that.
I love that. So you're trying to take taking that experimental psychology background where you're obviously, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure, doing tons of research and getting
Oh
data,
yes.
and then you've moved that into the coaching world where you're like, I need the data in order to give
Mm-hmm.
you this very personalized response, and so for people out there that are like, oh, I just want you to talk to me for 30 minutes and tell me my problems, it's like, no, I'm going to really cater them to who you are and what's going on with you. And a few times you've mentioned like career, home, physical well-being. So it sounds like you really cover all areas of life, not
A
just
lot.
health, not just your body, not just, your career. You're really like, let's look at this holistically, because
Oh,
if
yeah.
something, and I love the wheel of life, because the idea is, we're not always
Mm.
perfect in every area. It shifts, and
Yeah.
one area might be amazing, fantastic. Let's leave that alone. Let's focus on this area that's causing you, discomfort, or it's not allowing you to move forward. And the other thing you said, which I think is really important, especially with your Capricorn placements, is you mentioned, oh, when I cleaned up the space, I'm going to celebrate that.
Yeah.
That took me like 40 years of my life, I think, to realize that I didn't celebrate my achievements. I was just like,
You
oh, one
have
less thing
to.
to do, one less thing to do. Like, let's keep moving forward. And I have this amazing business coach that I've worked with, I think, for like 6 years. And she's like, do you celebrate your achievements? I was like, no, why would I? It's just one less thing to do. And she's like, please celebrate your accomplishments, even if you just acknowledge them, like write them down, like pat yourself on the back. It has been a game changer in my life from a burnout perspective and from like a self-love and self-esteem perspective, like something so small that we don't think about.
Oh, yeah. No, we don't. And this is still not a habit for me, but it's literally a huge question on the audit. Like, when was the last time you said something nice about something that you did?
Oh my gosh. I know, so common for us to like be humble, don't, reward yourself, let other people do it, but it's like, no, no one's going to reward me but me, so let
Nope.
me start
And there's nothing
appreciating.
wrong with it, too. It's not bragging, it's just giving
Mm-mm.
yourself credit.
No, 100%. I love that you said that. And so I would love to know, like, with your own experience of burnout, in your various careers. I mean, you've been through a lot more than we've even talked
A
about today.
lot.
A lot of different experimentation seems to be definitely an MO for you. Like, how has that really shaped the way that you work with your clients?
Oh my gosh. I've tried a lot of different career fields. Oh my gosh. If you need any proof that my brain works a little differently, just listen to this. I tried sales. I tried direct patient care. I tried working in a warehouse as a manager. I tried the military. I tried teaching.
You're like, what else can I do?
Yeah. And I'm still relatively young. I'd like to think so. I just turned 30 this year. So I feel like I've packed a lot of life experiences into just those few decades. Um, I don't feel 30 mentally. But I've seen a lot of different industries play out. I've seen a lot of different people's approaches to what they do. So I feel like I've gotten a lot more open minded in how I work with people. Like, I used to think back in grad school, the way I do things works perfectly for me. It should work perfectly for everybody else. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And you
Yep.
have to be willing to be flexible because you're the only one who has your brain.
Hmm. Yeah, flexibility is the key. And I think a lot of people want to be normal. They want it to be easy. Like, why
No.
can't I just do it the way everybody else does it? But when you're like, no, you actually can do it the way you do it, it probably takes a little more work, like you said, a little more experimentation. That's what I found too. Is like the way I want to do something for me might not exist just yet. So it's like I need to experiment a little bit and figure out what does work for me. So it's not just
Mhm.
like, oh, I read an article and that's the perfect solution for me. It's like, I read an article, let me try that. No, not quite. Let me tweak it here. And so having that patience, I think, is an important uh, trait to kind of garner, because it's like you need to be a little patient with yourself, with society, with the world, because like you're looking for something that may or may not exist yet. And so either you're creating it, you're experimenting, you're bringing multiple things together, you're doing something that works okay for now just to kind of keep moving forward, so it's a little bit of an adjustment, that it's not going to be the way the influencers talk about social media, where it's just like boom, you're good. It's like,
No.
well, let's, yeah, let's bring some stuff together. And I'm curious, you mentioned all the different careers you've had. Do you consider yourself multi-passionate, or were you just like experimenting to try and find the thing that worked for you?
It was a few things. I knew, like, from when I was very young, that I wanted to help people, but I really didn't think that through. So I wasn't sure what that looked like. I went to grad school because, oh, psychology is fascinating and I want to understand and I want to accumulate knowledge. But I sort of fell into social services and I loved it. I loved helping people in that context, but as a teacher, you help in a different way. And eventually it just got to the point of, I have accumulated all this knowledge, but there's not really a profession. Like, I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't have the degree for it. I'm not a licensed teacher. I don't have the degree for it. A lot of the positions right now that exist, I would have to stick with a particular organization's philosophy, or like only recommend stuff that's evidence-based. A lot of the science just hasn't caught up with what we know yet.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like nutritional medicine. Oh boy. It's just not there. It's just not there. I'm glad there's like 400 or something studies on what? EFT, energy psychology, something like that. There's like randomized controlled trials coming in now, but it's very new. So a position that would let me explore all those things didn't really exist. So I just made one.
I love that. Yeah, that's definitely that entrepreneurial spirit is like what I want. Doesn't exist, so I'm going to create it myself and, kind of forge my own
Yep.
path. One last question I have for you is with people who work with you, like what is a good first step for them? So in the sense of they're not happy with their career, they're not happy with their life, they're not happy with their environment, like whatever it might be, that they're just like, I'm not having this sense of satisfaction in one or more areas of life. Like what would be a good first step? Aside from hiring you, of course, but like what would be a good first step for them to start figuring out, like where should they look, what should they read, how can they kind of get out of that, like feeling that they're in?
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
I know that where everything just seems awful, like nothing is going right. I get it. I get it. But the solution that I found may not necessarily work for you. So what helped me, and again, we might have to try some different things, but this could just be a starting point. If you woke up tomorrow and you were just living your ideal life, what would that look like? What are you doing? Are you working? Are you in a relationship? Do you want to be in one? Do you have a pet? Are you in an apartment, a house? Are you in the city? Just all the details that you could possibly think of. And I find a lot of times in the people that I've talked to, a lot of them have not actually sat down and brainstormed this. So I think a huge part of it is just learning what makes you personally happy.
Mm-hmm. I think it's that introspection is important. When you're changing your life, when you're going through a transition, you really need to be introspective. And I don't like to use the word need a lot or have to, because I'm like, do whatever you want. But it's like you really need to go inside. And I think a lot of times we want solutions to be outside of us. Like someone give me the pill, someone tell me what to do, someone solve all my problems. It's really
That would be
inside. And you really
nice.
need to examine that. Yeah, examine that, because it's like that Dr. Seuss quote I use all the time. It's wherever you go, there you are. So you can change jobs, you can
Yep.
change locations, you can change spouses, you can change diet, but you're still who you are, and not in a bad way. It's just like you're going to keep repeating that over and over again until you kind of figure out what the deal is there. Wonderful. Well,
Most
I would love
definitely.
to move into the next segment, which I like to call my Vanilla Ice segment, because I'm a 90s girl. So if you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it, because I love solving business problems on the fly. And
All
I
right.
believe you. I believe you mentioned that you have trouble knowing when to slow down, especially when you're researching ways to help clients. So, like when you're helping people, it sounds like that's a big draw for you, and that just really like excites you, but can also like run you down. So I think you were looking
Mm-hmm.
for some more strategies on how to address that. Is that still the case?
That is still the case, yes. And I think it's just a combination of what my neurodivergence looks like. A part of it is just ADHD. So it's like my
Hmm.
brain is running very fast all the time. And I've been told I speak fast to try to keep up. But
Hmm.
what that looks like in business is that I think that, oh, maybe the next thing I stumble on is going to help a client. Or, oh, maybe this research article update that I just got emailed, maybe that will be another useful thing. And I've gotten better at checking myself. I have like an Apple Watch with a couple apps that say, "Oh, your system's a little overloaded. Make time for self care."
Yeah.
The problem is, I see that and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever."
Absolutely. So I think what's coming to mind for me, and I love what you said about apps, like with technology, there's so many things that we can do nowadays way easier than we could, back in the day. But obviously there's so many options that can be a little bit of a double-edged sword because you're trying to figure out what works best for you. So when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to, is this the one article, is this the book, is this the thing that's going to like help me help my clients, plus probably help myself as well?
Yeah.
I very much empathize with that. I'm a Gemini sun. My brain is constantly going. I've often said, if I could get paid to learn, I would be so happy. Like, just give me all the
Me.
books, give me all the information. Like, I don't have to do anything with it. I just want to like absorb all the information and then
It's
be able to,
fun.
yeah, it's so much fun. So I have anxiety about that too. Like when I see all these books that I've bought and I'm like, I feel guilty that I haven't read them all. And again, I've worked with a lot of coaches as well. I had a coach in the past who I was telling her that I was like, I have all these books. They're giving me a lot of anxiety. I'm just staring at them and thinking, what a loser I am. I haven't read them. I need to get this information. And she said, well, why? And this is a little bit more esoteric. Why don't you open the book and whatever it falls to, like either read that chapter or read that page and just trust that that's the
Ooh.
information you need right now. And so I got in the habit of, I would go through books and I'll look at the chapters and say which one appeals to me and I'll go to that one, or I'll just do like the more intuitive approach of like just let it open up and read that part and then I'll put it away. And then I'll either, if I think the book is something I might want to read later, I'll keep it, but a lot of times I'll donate it and just be like, you know what, kind of passing it forward, like giving it forward so that I'm like, I got what I needed out of this. Hopefully someone else can get what they need. And it's not foolproof. It's, sometimes it definitely pops up. I just cleared my desk of books today and it started to kind of flow back in, but that's
Wow.
been a real big help for me. Yeah.
I would love to try that. I
Yeah, give it
have
a whirl.
so many books.
Yeah, yeah, give it a whirl. It's like and then because you never know, and I think you can look back on your life and all the things you've done at the time you were doing them, you had no idea it would bring you to this point, right? And so
No
I,
idea.
I kind of right, so I kind of look at it that way too. It's like, okay, maybe 10 years from now I'll find this book again and that's when I need the information. I don't necessarily have to have it right now. So it's a little wooey, a little bit of trust, a little bit of kind of letting go with practice. I think that'll be really helpful. So I would definitely give that a whirl. And then you mentioned the apps you have, you just ignore them. So what I've also found for people is, what gets your attention? Is it visual? Is it auditory? Is it like a haptic? Is it like, I personally love habit stacking. So let's say if you eat
Mm-hmm.
dinner at 6 p.m. every night or whatever, like is a good routine for you, if you have something that's routine, and then say 15 minutes before I do this thing, I'm going to read a book. And then that gives you a good stopping point because you're having dinner at 6 or you're going to go watch your favorite TV show or whatever else. Like I found that to be really helpful to kind of put those deadlines in place that are not restrictive, because if they're restrictive I will rebel against them like nobody's business and be like, no, I'm in control of my life. But if it's something that I'm looking forward to, that's been really helpful for me. So I'm not sure if that will be a fun experiment for you, and if you do try it, please let me know if it helps.
It will be fun, and the funny thing is, I know what habit stacking is, and do you think I've tried to utilize it? No.
It's all good. That's why we are coaches and consultants, because we are really good at learning things and helping other people and not necessarily applying it to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves sometimes.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Katheryn. You have an amazing story. I mean, just being compassionate and authentic, and that personality traits can actually coexist with success. You can be yourself and be successful. So I love that you've created your own
Oh, yeah.
framework and that you've been able to build a career that like really supports you while helping others thrive. So if today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to invite you to take our free quiz and discover your own unique business archetype based on your astrology and how you can align your career with who you truly are. The link will be in the show notes. We'll also include some information about how you can connect with Katheryn and enjoy her 15-minute free chit chat or rant or a discovery call, however you want to put it. And those links will all be in the show notes. I hope you check them out. The last thing I would love to do before we end today, as I mentioned before, I have a little bit of a problem with collecting tarot and oracle cards. And so I was like, oh, I know how I'll justify this. I'll do it on my podcast. So I typically, intuitively pull a deck for the client, kind of based on their bio, or for the guest based on their bio and everything. I pulled a deck for you, and then one of my decks fell off the shelf and hit me in the head. And I was like, oh,
Oh
well, I guess
my.
this is the one that we're supposed to use.
Hello.
So, are you a dog person?
I love dogs.
Okay, so that's what happened. Is the wise dog
What?
tarot fell out of my shelf and hit me in the head, and I'm like,
Oh my
okay.
gosh, look at that.
So I was like, okay, universe, I will do the dogs, and I wanted to make sure you were a dog person.
Oh, animal person in general.
Perfect. I have 3 doggies myself. Do you have any pets currently?
Aw. Yes, a little dog, little in size. He's napping right now. His name is Sparky. He just turned 11. He's an
Oh,
absolute sweetheart.
oh, sweet little old dude over there. All right,
Yeah, he gets
perfect.
spoiled so much.
I'm sure. Yeah, I have 3, and I say back in my, because I'm similar multi passionate like you, where I've had tons of different careers, and back in my early life, I used to be a dog trainer, and people were
Oh,
like, "Oh my gosh,
wow.
you're a dog trainer! That's so cool!" And I'm like, "Do not look at these dogs as examples because these are like emotional support dogs for me, and they are really spoiled." They're the dogs I got when I burned out, and I was basically like, I just need something fluffy around me all the time. So
It helps.
it helps a lot.
So
Yeah,
it helps.
it helps a lot. So anybody who's going through a burnout, just go get a dog. You'll be fine. I'm
Or
just
just volunteer at an animal shelter like
Oh, I
I do.
know. Yes, yes, fostering. Fostering is a great thing to do
Mm-hmm.
too if you don't have a long term availability. But perfect. We've got you at the 2 of Wands. Is the card that
Oh,
came
look
out
at
for you
that.
today.
All
And
right.
so the 2 of Wands. So when you pull up a tree, not only do you impact what is on the surface, you disrupt the unique ecosystem housed below with the roots. Take into consideration your actions before you make a play and consider the consequences. So this is kind of a card of like think before you leap. Take a moment to do some research, do some investigation, and I love the fact that it's an ecosystem because again, you're all about the holistic. So it's like when you heal one part, you're healing another, but when you damage one part, it's also damaging another. So really being mindful of that full picture when you're, I think, looking at your life and trying to improve it. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. And this card speaks to me so much because even though I try to stay organized, I live out of my paper planner, I have post it notes everywhere, I try
Mm,
to stay organized. Sometimes my enthusiasm for something just runs away with me and I'm down like an hour and a half rabbit hole on some
mm.
obscure topic. So, yes, I feel that card.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katheryn. We're going to put some links in the show notes with some of your amazing offerings. I think you have like a 15-minute
Hmm.
complimentary call people can get on with you to get to know you better. And then, of course, once they're ready to work with you, they can fill out your wellness audit and start actually moving towards a life that works for them. So I really appreciate you being on the show today. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody gets 15 minutes. No charge. If you just want to rant, that is fine. Everybody gets 15 minutes.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Second Chapter Society podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend who might need some inspiration. See you next week. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to shoot me a message on TikTok or connect with me on YouTube. Links can be found below in the show notes. Until next time, keep building your business with mastery and a sprinkling of magic.